We are live here on the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch. He is JHK. JHK, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man. Same old day, just a different number.
Exactly. Well, we're a little bit more enthusiastic than that. This is a great fight we're going to be talking about here today. If you guys haven't watched the show before, basically we'll be answering your questions, and we're also going to be focusing on an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we're going to be looking at the Cody Garbrandt and Rob Font fight, which is going to be taking place on May 22nd. I wanted to give an early preview of that. Before we dig into that, though, little housekeeping. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We will be answering questions, but that'll be after we do the full breakdown. And want to remind everyone to download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. It's great. I put my picks on there last week. I think my UFC picks were actually pretty good last week overall, minus a few fights, but I got the main event right. There's a few others. So the great thing about this app is that you can go head to head with us. You can see what our picks are, and it's very interactive, and it is the best app in the game right now. So make sure you download that Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. It's great. Just can't say enough good things about it.
And who's ranked number one?
Is it you?
Yes, I'm ranked number one.
There you go.
I just need to brag while
slide that in there.
I just need to brag while I'm on top because that fall could be deadly, right? In a couple of weeks. Who knows?
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, well, let's dig into it here. We can pull up the graphic now, producer Michael, if you want. We've got Cody Garbrandt taking on Rob Font. I was just telling you this off camera, John, that I can't believe I got that mixed up actually. Cody Garbrandt's ranked number 4. I was reading the wrong thing off air, so I didn't make that mistake there. So it'll be number 3 against number 4. So it's Rob Font is ranked number 3, Cody Garbrandt ranked number 4. I guess that makes sense. I'm a little surprised to see Garbrandt as high as he is because prior to beating a Sunset, he'd lost 3 in a row. So I guess you can put him there since he's a former champion, but big fight. I mean, everyone's focused, and we talked about it last week, the Dillashaw and Sandhagen fight. This fight's right behind, and I wouldn't be surprised if, there's some weird stuff that happens that maybe you see, maybe even the winner of this getting into the title picture. Of course, we know now, I don't know if this happened or we had the news last week, but obviously Aljamain Sterling going under the knife, so he's going to be out for a while. So do they do an interim title? Do they make Hyon wait for that rematch? We'll see what happens. But either way, kind of what I'm setting up here for everyone, this is a big fight for the bantamweight division, and it's a tale of 2 different situations. You've got Cody Garbrandt, who won his last fight in highlight reel fashion over Rafael Sunsao. Is he back? I mean, he had a really rough stretch where he was getting finished a number of times. And then you got Rob Font, who'd kind of been very inconsistent in his career. He had some setbacks, lost to Pedro Munoz, lost to a few other fighters, but that last win over Marlon Moraes really earned him this spot. So why don't we talk first, John, about the implications of this fight and how we got here?
Yeah, Rob Font, after he got the win in his last fight and he was ranked number 3, I knew in my mind, I just got this inclination that he was going to get a massive name. And Cody Garbrandt, I believe I interviewed Rob Font after the fight, and he told me that he was in discussions for a fight, and Cody Garbrandt was one of the names that he brought up. And then lo and behold, a couple days later, they announced the main event for this, for the show, and it's Cody Garbrandt versus Rob Font. It makes sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
Cody Garbrandt, he is a big name. Rob Font needs a big name on his resume to kind of shoot him up and kind of, to be honest, earn that number 3 spot. A little better, earn that number 3 spot a little better. And I feel like this is a win-win situation for Rob Font, and really for Cody Garbrandt, it's just kind of like he's battling to keep his position. And I agree with you. I don't think he's number 4 in the rankings, man. There's a lot of guys that should be ranked ahead of him.
I think Aldo would beat him. I mean, you just look at some of the guys that are ranked below him in that division. You got even like a guy like Pedro Munoz who beat Garbrandt is behind him, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I know Munoz lost to Sterling and Edgar. I mean, the Edgar fight, I think he won, but nonetheless, that's how we are in terms of the rankings and all that. But yeah, it's certainly very interesting. And you're right. It is kind of interesting because Garbrandt's a former champ, had the losing streak, but then Rob Font also, you look at his wins, they're not really great wins, other than Moraes, right? Ricky Simon not ranked. Ricky Simone's a good fighter, but is he that top tier? No, not really. And then you've got the win over Sergio Pettis, who's a flyweight. I mean, he is fighting bantamweight in Bellator. He's actually fighting for their title coming up here pretty soon, but not as good of a win as some of the wins that Garbrandt has had. So I will give him that. But that's sort of the optics of the fight as we usually sort of set this up. But let's get to the tail of the tape here. Let's get the 2 fighter names up here. So Cody Garbrandt, 29 years old, 5'8" with a 65.5-inch reach. We've got also Rob Font, who is 33 years old, 5'8" with a 71.5 inch reach. So like he usually is, John, Rob Font going to have a bit of a reach advantage in this fight. He's a pretty big bantamweight. That is one thing we should make note of, is that Rob is, a bigger bantamweight. I've been around Rob. He's a pretty big guy for the weight class. Cody talked about going to flyweight, and I remember when I heard that, I was like, wow, that doesn't seem like a good idea. But talking to people at Team Alpha Male that train with him, Cody is pretty light. Like, he could make the 125 limit. So I actually think that's an advantage for Rob, because I think Rob's a guy that could potentially even fight at featherweight, just with how tall and long he is, right, for the division. So, we'll see if that plays a role in the fight here. You look at the records there, 18-4, 12-3. It's tough to gauge those losses to Dillashaw, right? Because was he using? Was he not? I mean, it's tough to say where Garbrandt is. But the one thing we do know, John, is that Garbrandt's taken a lot of damage, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you look at not only the losses to Dillashaw, but he also got knocked out by Pedro Munoz, who, if you're looking at it, Munoz not really known as a guy to finish fights early. So that was a pretty devastating loss for Garbrandt as well. With Font, it's been these mental lapses in certain performances. The Munoz fight where he got submitted in the first round. But outside of that, he's been very tough to finish. Just the one stoppage loss. By the way, did you know Rob Font fought Des Green in his second pro fight, the lightweight, which is kind of interesting. Totally went off on a tangent there. Didn't mean to do that. But kind of what I'm getting at is Rob Font's very durable, and Rob Font has not taken the damage that Cody Garbrandt's taken in his career. So we'll have to factor that in this fight as well. But in terms of Garbrandt, I mentioned it there. Lost 3 of 4. Coming off the win over Asuncao. Asuncau's not an easy guy to finish, but he did so in the second round. But I think we can all agree there that Asuncao not really the same fighter he used to be. There was a point where Asuncao looked like he was going to get a title shot, and it's just been, setback after setback since then. He does have the win over Dominic Cruz, which, yes, it was back in December of 2016, but that was a masterful performance. If that Cody shows up against Rob Font, he's got a very good chance of winning this fight. So we know what Garbrandt's going to do in this fight. He's going to try and keep the standing. He's going to try and strike, but that comes at a price. Like I said, he has been knocked out a couple times. He has taken a lot of damage. So we'll see the game plan here for Cody Garbrandt. Another quick note as well is that obviously with Garbrandt, not just training at Team Alpha Male, doing some work over there with Mark Henry over there in New Jersey. So will that pay off? It was something that he did leading into the Asuncao fight. So we'll see if that makes sense. But that's sort of everything on Cody Garbrandt's end. What do you think, John, in terms of Cody Garbrandt in this fight and his experience, and obviously having that championship pedigree in the past is going to benefit him in this fight?
Yeah, I think that's a big factor in this one. The spotlight, right? Cody Garbrandt's been in the spotlight multiple times over, and Rob Font, I believe this is his first main event, man. This is his first marquee fight. You know what I mean? How is he going to handle that? How is he going to handle the pressures of that? The pressures of like having a title shot maybe in his grasp, right? And facing a guy with devastating knockout power. That's what interests me the most, man. Will Rob Font step up to the plate and deliver? Cody Garbrandt, we've seen him deliver, but the big question for me with Cody Garbrandt is the COVID.
Mm-hmm.
He's been battling that COVID, right? And I'm just thinking, like, how is that going to affect him? And also, on top of that, he was about to go down to flyweight, like you mentioned earlier. Was he cutting weight? You know what I mean? Was he cutting weight throughout that time too? And then now he's got to put the weight back on. I don't know the whole situation around Cody Garbrandt, but man, there's a lot of questions with Cody Garbrandt in this fight. You know what I mean? It's just, to me, Rob Font, is he going to be able to come through in the spotlight? And Cody Garbrandt, is he going to be the same Cody Garbrandt, right? Is he going to be the guy that knocked out Asuncao, or is he going to be a shell of himself because of COVID, man? It's like, what effects? Did you dig deeper into that? Did you know like what?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you reminded me about that. I did see the interview he had, and he talked about some of the struggles, and that's part of the reason why he hasn't been in the cage for so long, because of the fact he's still dealing with these symptoms. So you never know. I mean, again, COVID's affected everyone differently. In his case, we'll have to see what he looks like in the fight. By the way, if you didn't see the odds there that popped up on the screen, Rob Font is the favorite right now. Cody Garbrandt, the underdog, which I find a little interesting, but at the same time, like, I mean, I don't want to spoil it. Well, I will spoil it. I am going to be picking Rob Font in this fight, but we'll get into it a little bit later. But I understand where the odds are coming from, and I'll sort of get into that as well. So that's everything on sort of Cody Garbrandt's end. Again, former champion. His biggest win by far is the Cruz win, which was a fight where I think it was one of the first times where we've seen Cruz in a fight where, I mean, outside of him losing to Cejudo, where Cruz decisively lost. Like, the Dillashaw fight was close. Some of those other fights were close that Cruz has had. Other than him finishing Mizugaki, but it was the first time where like Cruz had decisively lost a fight, and you can't ignore that. And yes, it was 2016, but still, obviously that was a very big win there. So, like we said, the positives for Garbrandt are the fact that he's a former champ. He's been in that championship, type mentality, type experience, and all that. Obviously has some good wins, like I mentioned, the Cruz win. I mean, Cody has better wins than Rob does overall. And then the other thing is, yeah, like I said, just that knockout power as well. I mean, I would think if we're looking at power here, I would give the edge to Cody Garbrandt as well. The cons, obviously, been knocked out a bunch of times, COVID, inactive. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons not to like Cody. So those are sort of the pros and cons of Cody Garbrandt. Let's dig into Rob Font a little bit here. One of the things you talked about was, this being the first main event for him. And I think this is long overdue for Rob. He's been putting in the work. I do wonder, too, with him being so close to Calvin Kattar and Calvin getting that opportunity with Max Holloway in the main event, to do that walk. I've talked to fighters about this. They say it's very beneficial. I even talked to guys that aren't even in the UFC, and just getting to go through that whole experience, it sort of is a learning tool for them. So for Rob to be able to go through that with Calvin, and yeah, I know the result wasn't what Calvin wanted, obviously, but to go through that and be in that experience of being a main event, I think that's got to benefit Rob a little bit as well. So Rob, like we mentioned, a little bit older, but is going to have the height and reach advantage in this fight. Had a really good win over Marlon Moraes. And what was more impressive about that win, that was Rob's first fight since having some knee surgery. So the fact that he came back and made a statement like that, very, a big win for Rob Font in that regard, and obviously earned him this fight as well. Rob's good everywhere. He's got good ground game. He's got obviously good stand-up as well. Remember, he had that submission win over Douglas Andrade a couple of years ago. So we know the ground game's there as well. Tyson Chartier, I mean, we've talked to him, I don't know how many times. One of the best coaches in the game. Tyson literally is a guy with, a big notepad. And, the second they get fights, they start going through it and start digging into it a little bit deeper. So he's going to be well coached ahead of this fight. He's getting good looks. I know he's been training a bit with Mitch Raposo, who we now found out is going to be on The Ultimate Fighter. Mitch is, we'll see him in the UFC someday. I'm pretty sure, whether it's through The Ultimate Fighter or not. Mitch is super talented. Rob's getting a lot of good looks. So that's another thing as well. And Rob's not doing a lot of traveling, right? He's keeping everything close to home, getting the work in he can. I know he's working a bit with Kattar. I know Kattar's sort of in and out of the gym, not back to full-time training. So that actually may be a disadvantage for Rob heading into this fight. He's not going to have Calvin at full potential. At least from the last time I talked to him was about a month ago. Calvin was not in the gym regularly. Will that ramp up close to fight time? You would hope so, but it depends on where Kattar's health is right now. So your thoughts on Rob Font as he takes on this big fight?
Yeah, Rob Font, like you said, he's good everywhere. I feel like Rob Font has more ways to win compared to Cody Garbrandt, right? The reach advantage is going to be something that's going to play out well with him if it does stay on the feet. He's like you said, he's submitted guys. I mean, he can scramble, he can wrestle, he's taller, and something that really shines about him is he's never been knocked out. I mean, he's never been knocked out, right? So he has a good chin, and he's faced some hard hitters in the past. Even his last fight, right, Marlon, he was cracked a few times in that fight, and he didn't go down. So I think that's going to play a big factor too, is his chin, his reach, and I think Cody's going to go in there and try to stand with them. Of course, I don't think there's a secret to what Cody's going to do. We've seen it multiple times over. Even though we want him to change, it just doesn't seem like he's changing. But Rob Font, he's evolved in front of us, and I think that's something big that we've seen from him. I love that Rob Font is changing, evolving, and his striking is much more diverse. When you look at the striking, like I pointed out, his reach is longer, but his striking is more diverse. He's not trying to sit there and box with you the whole time. He's kicking, he's kneeing, he's elbowing, and I think that's going to play major against Cody Garbrandt.
The other thing with Rob that we should point out, he's had a couple gaps in his career. If you remember, when he signed with the UFC, he had that fight against George Roop, and then it took about almost 2 years off. He fought, I think it was July 2014, then did not fight again until January of 2016. So had a gap there, and then obviously had a gap last year, which I actually in some ways think is a bit of an advantage. It allowed Rob to get better, just like we saw in the last fight, right? And then we talked about obviously the knee surgery and then him being off for a year as well. I do want to emphasize that Rob has not taken a lot of damage in his career. And I think that is very important when we're talking about this fight, because if they do decide to stand and trade, who's going to be more durable? It's going to be the guy who doesn't take as many shots and the guy who gets to spar with Calvin Kattar all the time too. So, I mean, that's another thing to sort of be mindful in this fight is the lack of wars, so to speak, that Rob Font's been in. Cody's been in plenty. And I know he's had a lot of quick finishes as well, but he's been hit to get hit, or to hit to get hit, or however you say it. But you understand what I'm getting at is that Cody's taken, he's been more sort of firefights and things of that nature. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. Okay. Might as well get to the pick. I kind of spoiled mine, but where are you going on this one, man? Because it's a very interesting matchup. The odds are close. How do you see this fight playing out?
Man, when I look at Cody and I think man, I think he's training with Mark Henry and more. I think now he's training more with Mark Henry, but I feel like he's at Team Alpha Male too. I think he's splitting his time. I wish he would go in there and wrestle, because when you look at Rob Font and you look at his last 4 fights, he's been taken down every single fight. Even he was taken down by Sergio Pettis, who's not a wrestler, right? He was taken down by a Sun Sal. He was taken down by Ricky Simone 6 times. And in his last fight, he was taken down twice. So, like, if Cody would go there and wrestle him, because we know Cody can wrestle, right? And he has the speed to do it. I think it would be a good fight for Cody, but that's not what's going to happen. I think Cody's going to go there. He's going to get hit once, and he's just going to be like, what? Where am I? I'm in the octagon. Let's go bang. And Rob's going to bang with him. I think if Rob goes in there and draws him into a firefight, I think Rob has enough power and diversity, and he has that reach to where he could clip Cody and knock him out. I think it could happen early in the fight, and that's why I'm going with Rob. I think Rob is on this trajectory. If you look at the last 5 fights, Rob is 4-1. Cody is 2-3, and he's been knocked out 3 times. I think the 4th knockout is going to come.
Also, there was the Sunset matchup was by design. Rafael Sunset, how many knockout wins does this guy have? Barely any. I don't think he. I think maybe he had the one over. It was Matthew Lopez, right? Who I mean, it was one of those fights where he needed an opponent. Matthew Lopez stepped up. Matthew Lopez, by the way, retired now. So it's one of those things where it was by design. But with this fight, it's a bit risky, and I get it because Cody has to fight guys like this if he wants to get a title shot. I don't think you could justify it off of just the Sunset win, although they were willing to give him the flyweight title shot, which speaks to sort of the politics of this industry. But this is a dangerous fight. It reminds me a bit of the Munoz fight. I remember when he lost to Dillashaw and they matched him up with Pedro Munoz. I was like, that's not a good idea because what's the game there, right? Munoz not a big name, and Munoz is good everywhere. And what happened? He got knocked out. And I actually picked Munoz in that fight because I thought you're fighting a guy who's fresh and hungry and is not had an opportunity like this, and you're fighting a guy in Cody who probably thought it was a layup. And what happened? He got knocked out. So I'm with you there. I think Cody does turn this into a firefight. And I think while he does have more power than Rob, I think Rob's technique will get the better of Cody in this fight, where he'll pick his shots a little bit better, find that opening. And I could see a situation where he stumbles Cody and then goes for the kill. I don't think you'll see like a one-punch knockout there from Rob Font to get it done, but I could see him wobbling Cody and then just sort of, laying that fire down and just, getting the TKO finish. So I'm with you as well. Again, I do have to point out, like you mentioned, is the takedowns could be a bit interesting. Alpha male known for their wrestling, but Garbrandt doesn't seem to do that. So I'm banking on the fact that the old Cody's going to show up in a bad way and go into a brawl with Rob Font and get knocked out. So that's going to be my pick is Rob Font. Before we move away from this, and we'll get to questions again. If you guys have questions, just post them in the chat here. We'll get to them as soon as we can. The implications of this, and I did mention that earlier. So let's assume that Alja's going to be out. Let's assume they don't do an interim title. I don't mind if they do in this case, because you're out for 9 months. It's a long time to hold up a division. So let's assume they don't. Let's assume Hyon is going to fight, Aljo, so he's at the top. I think there could be a possibility of, the Dillashaw-Sandhagen winner fighting the winner of this fight, potentially, if they need to keep active or whatever, especially if Garbrandt wins and Dillashaw wins. I mean, they'll run that back again if they can. It's 2 huge names in the division. If Sandhagen and Font win, maybe they go that route, but not exactly like a big money fight, like big name fight in that division as well. So it'll be really interesting. Like, I honestly don't know. Maybe they do something where they throw an interim title, or maybe they do give Hyon someone else to keep him active. I don't know what route they decide to go. But kind of what I'm getting at here, John, is that keep an eye on this fight, because this could, especially if Cody ends up pulling this one off, it could get very interesting in terms of the title picture, because the UFC, they'll pull a fast one. They'll, give someone a shot that maybe you weren't thinking of. Maybe they'll do it like how we talked about a couple of weeks ago with Nate Diaz fighting Leon Edwards. Like, that was totally out of left field. There could be something there at play with this fight as well. But either way, very important fight for the division, and glad they put it together. And I like the timing of this too, with it being very close to Garbrandt and Dillashaw and Sandhagen. I'm losing my mind here. So there you go. Let's get to our first question here. James in the chat says, do you think Cruz versus Cody 2 might be on the cards with a win here? Well, the thing with Cruz is he is ranked, despite getting that win in the last fight, he's ranked number 9. So I think if Garbrandt's going towards a title shot, I don't know what that really does for him, especially if Garbrandt has already has the win over Cruz. Like, what is he getting out of it other than maybe the name value of fighting a Cruz? So I think it's possible. If I had to give a percentage on that, I'd probably say 40%. What do you think about that?
Man, I don't think it's likely at all. I don't see Cruz fighting any of those guys in any time soon. I think Cruz is going to fight somebody in the bottom half of the top 15. I don't see him fighting anybody up there.
I could see them doing. Cruz wants O'Malley, but I don't think the UFC wants that, because the chance of O'Malley getting a highlight reel finish on Cruz, not very likely. You could also do Cruz and Aldo. I mean, that's two huge names. You could do Cruz and Edgar. There's so many possibilities here with Cruz because of his name value, because of being a former champ. You could go a lot of different ways there, but I agree. Not likely. I think we see Cody and Cruz happening again. Kaona. I don't know how you say that. He says Rose versus Weili. Who is winning? John and I are split on this. I'm pretty sure. Who are you taking?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Weili on this one, but I think like this is a toss-up fight. I don't think it's a for sure bet on any way. You know what I mean? I think like if you're gonna, I think you should stay away from this fight. If you're a betting man, I think you should stay away. Don't bet. But I feel like Weili can go in there and do it. I feel like in the last year she's gonna come out different. You know what I mean? She's gonna come out different, better. But Rose is gonna come out different. She's gonna come out better. And one thing about Rose, she doesn't look like it, but she holds a lot of power in her punches, man. And I think that could cause some problems for Weili. She might have, she probably hasn't never been cracked like that in the past, right? And we'll see. You know what I mean? If she does get cracked, how does she respond to that? If she can't, she might get knocked out. You know, Rose is just she's an anomaly in many ways, man. The way that her body is, you know, the frame, you know, of her body and the way that she packs a punch, you know, even like Andrade said in the interview that she's never been hit like that. You know what I mean? You know, like she didn't expect to get hit like that. And we seen what she did to Joanna. So I don't know, man, but it doesn't matter. I'm going with Weili. I'm going with the Asian, you know what I mean? I got to side with the Asian crowd. So they'll kill me if I don't.
No. Okay. So a couple things on this that I've noticed over the last couple of days, because, you know, I put the pros picks out. I obviously did my preview show on Monday as well. There's like a weird combination of like really hardcore Weili Zhang fans that I didn't even know existed that are like, if you even suggest that Rose has a chance in this fight, you're the dumbest person on the planet, according to some of these people. And number two is the people who just hate Rose, like even before this whole communism comment. And again, we got into this last week a little bit. We're not going to dig into it. We don't both understand the whole optics of it. This is not a political show. So whatever, if you want to be upset with her for that, that's fine. I mean, it's not really in our wheelhouse, so to speak. But also, you know, regardless of that, people don't like Rose anyways because of the Conor McGregor bus incident. So there's like this weird thing where people want to see get you know, Rose get destroyed, but that's also leaked into the fight a bit, where I see a lot of people saying Rose should be scared to fight Weili. Like, she fought Andrade twice. Like, why are we ignoring that? Like, does Andrade hit like a bag of pillows? No, she hits like a freaking hammer. Go ask Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She was unconscious in the first round after Andrade got done with her. Ask Rose. She got slammed by Andrade and got knocked out. But there's this sort of weird narrative that I'm seeing with this fight where people are acting like Rose has a bad chin or something, and I just don't see it. Yes, she was dropped by Andrade in the rematch, but she still ended up winning it. That slam that she lost in the first fight was a weird slam. Like, I almost feel like if anyone was dropped like that, they would have been knocked out. But there's this like weird sort of narrative going into this fight. So anyways, I bring all that up because I feel like a lot of people are not, like you saying, you know, making this a very close fight. I see it that way as well. Now I'm going with Rose, and my reason for that is I think she'll be able to utilize the height and reach very well and sort of keep Zhang at bay and not be able to get those power shots. The other thing is, like, Zhang being this knockout artist, like, yeah, she knocked out a bunch of women leading into the UFC. She knocked out Andrade, super impressive. Not going to take that away from her. She did go 5 rounds with Joanna, and not to say that Joanna is easy to finish. She's not. Rose was the only one who's finished her in the octagon. But this idea that like Zhang is like an early finisher is not exactly true. Like, she had I think it was a submission win over, was it Jessica Aguilar? But in general, she's not. Actually, let me bring up her record instead of just trying to do this off memory. This idea that like Zhang's like an early finisher and that Rose is going to get finished early, I just don't see it. I think if Zhang does finish her, it's going to be later. You know, where it goes a little bit later. So yeah, it was Aguilar. I was right. Okay, good. My memory served me well. But you get what I'm getting at. Like, people never look at the resume when it comes to these fights. It's always about the last fight, or you know, in this case, 2 fights ago, she knocked out Andrade, so Weili's an early finisher. No, she's not in the UFC anyways. And maybe she does go out there and do it, but I don't think that's the most likely outcome. I think it's more likely that you see this fight go a little bit deeper. So I'm going to pick Rose. I am getting a lot of hate for that. That's fine. And by the way, one more thing before we move on from this, I know I've spent way too much time on this question. If you go against the grain, if you pick an underdog, it's like people giving me crap for picking Askren last week. You shouldn't be talking crap. If you're going against the grain, you're going against the grain, but you can't get mad at someone for picking the underdog. If you pick the favorite and you say, I know for sure this is going to happen, and then you lose, fair enough. But if you pick an underdog, there's a risk involved in doing that, just like I am picking Rose this weekend. So you can't, like, I had people come after me last week saying like, oh, like Askren, you know, you were convinced he was going to win. No, I never said that. I said Paul could absolutely knock him out. But my whole point is that, like, if you're going to talk smack, don't talk smack on someone going against the grain. That's all I'm saying. So
yeah, and also I wanted to add too about Weili, you know, like you said, in her lead up to the title, she didn't really finish many girls, and it was like it wasn't like impressive finishes, but she
Mhm.
won the fights, and
Mhm.
she's had her best performances in title fights. But it kind of shows you that she's getting better. A
Mhm.
lot of people, that's what they're looking at. They're like, oh, she's getting better as each fight goes, and you're just seeing the best of her in the title fights. And I can understand that side too. But man, Rose is an animal, and Weili's team, they know she's an animal. It's not
Yeah.
like they're underestimating her, man. They know she's an animal. They know she can crack, and they're ready for her. And Rose is ready too, man. She's got one of the best coaches ever in
Yeah.
Trevor Whitman. You know what I mean? And he's got 2 title fights that night. What an amazing individual that guy is, right?
Yeah, and I wish I could get an interview with that guy. He doesn't do much
Yeah.
media. We're Facebook friends. He just doesn't answer my messages. But
Yeah.
had the opportunity to meet Trevor a couple of years ago backstage. Because here's a little tip for you media people out there: when they do the media scrums, and I know things are different now with COVID, but back in the day when you did the full media scrums and you're sitting there, there's always coaches hanging around there. Go get an interview with them. That's what I used to do. I do my media scrum, I get my questions in, and then I'd leave the media scrum because we're all uploading the same video anyways. I'd cut mine short, and then I go grab like a Trevor Whitman or Eric Nixick or whoever's hanging out there. Remember Amanda Nunes was hanging out one time for Nina's win. I grabbed her, interview did great views. So when you're at an event, take advantage of the people around you. Do a quick interview and do that. I remember interviewing Trevor a couple times. Actually, when Gaethje beat the Cerrone, same thing. So there we go. So yeah, anyways, I'm going Rose. He's going Weili Zhang. Again, don't hate me because I'm going against the grain. That's all I'm going to say. What else we got here? James says, what's up with the weird response from Dana throwing Shelby under the bus, re the Stevens push? Yeah, so I didn't catch the whole thing. What exactly did Dana say? He was just like, Sean Shelby should have, I don't know, done a better job.
That's why he's there. He's supposed to keep the guys, under control, and he didn't keep them under control. Basically, that's what he said. But Dana's been there multiple times where guys pushed each other, slapped each other, all kinds. He was there when Nate Diaz slapped Conor McGregor's hand, right? Or
Yeah.
or vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many guys that push each other. I don't understand that comment. It's kind of a weird comment that he came up with, but I guess, Dana, he just says what he wants to say. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
Yeah, Dana said a lot of things that don't make sense. This is one of them. If you look at the way they were facing off, you didn't think that you were going to see a push. No one expected that, including Close. That's why he got hurt, was because he wasn't anticipating it as well. So it's almost like a whiplash effect, like you get in a car accident, right? So that's sort of what happened there. Not going to read the guy's username, but he says, now TJ is back and clean. Do we see a rematch with Cody soon, if ever? Yeah, I think they'll try and run that back if Cody wins and TJ wins, assuming. But or if they both lose, then you could set that up as well. That's a big fight, right? There's a lot of bad blood there. Former teammates, tough coaches. I mean, that's a fight that I think, even though TJ has got the better of it, you got the steroid allegations that kind of erases those wins, and to some degree, so we'll have to see. So yeah, I think it's absolutely on the table.
That's a main event in the future for sure. And you know what? Going back to, remember the title implications of Rob Font and the Cody Garbrandt. I could see them maybe if Cody wins and TJ wins, I could see them fighting each other.
Oh yeah,
for a title shot, or even for, who knows, for an interim title.
Yeah,
I don't know that you've seen the UFC do some weird things in the past, and they love Cody and they like TJ too. I don't see why how long is Aljo out for? What, like a year?
Is he out that long?
I don't know. There's no clarity on that, right? So if he's out for a long time, man, I don't know what you do with Peter. I could see Peter even fighting the winner of Rob Font versus Cody, right? If Cody wins, I can see him fighting Cody. I can see him fighting TJ. If TJ beats Corey.
Well, Hyon and Cody have some history. You remember they had that altercation at was it 245? I think he just at backstage, because I forget, was it Hyon beat Faber, and then Garbrandt was there, and they're boys and whatever. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Jose Flores says, do you think Cody's flyweight title shot is on the line here? No, because I think even if he lost, they'd probably still give it to him. You know what I mean? Like, that's the fact that they were going to give him that title shot off one win didn't make sense to me to begin with, when he doesn't have a single win in the weight class. So I think that ship sailed. At this point, although if Cody loses again, it might force him down to flyweight. Maybe he doesn't get a title shot, but maybe he gets a flyweight fight. I don't know, but I don't think so. If there's one thing we've learned in this industry, losses don't matter, because you can be Yoel Romero, you can be whoever coming off a loss and still get a title shot. So I wouldn't put it past anyone for that happening. What do you think?
Yeah, Cody's in a good position, and for some reason he has angels in the UFC to where he's just getting opportunity after opportunity, man.
No,
And
he's got a hitman in the UFC, but in his manager. So
yeah,
that's what it comes down to.
true.
We got Roman here. By the way, Roman, thanks for tuning in, man. Roman's a regular viewer on my channel as well and on my other podcasts. So appreciate the support, Roman. He says winner of Sanhagen, TJ should fight Hyon for the interim title. Yeah, I think they would be ahead of Garbrandt and Font. I'm with you there. And yeah, I don't mind doing an interim title just because of if Aljo's out that long. You got to keep the division moving. You can't have them tied up. We already got the featherweight title tied up because of this Ultimate Fighter thing. So I'd be fine with that. That's where I think an interim title makes sense. If you're looking at more than a year or close to a year, do the interim title. Don't have an issue with that at all.
Especially the champion's injured. You know, I mean, he just got done
and
with
the way it
neck
happened
surgery.
and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
the
Like,
way this was the worst case scenario for the bantamweight division, right?
I know, it
Just
really
the
is.
worst case scenario. But you know, I hope Aljo gets, you know, gets well soon, man. I hope his neck is back to normal, because you never know with these things. You know what I mean? Like, he could be in rehab and he could tweak something. You know, you never know what could happen with these injuries, and the neck is something so sensitive to where maybe he will be gone for a long time. You know, and like you said, throw that interim in there, do it.
Speaking of injuries, I just found this out recently. I interviewed Merab Dvalishvili, who's going to be fighting Cody Stamen. I think it's next week or the week after. Asked him about Al Quinta, who I don't know. I've tried to get an interview with Al. It's not happening or hasn't happened yet. But I asked him about Al. Apparently, Al's in Vegas with Merab. He's not doing so well. Like, I heard his knee injury is pretty bad to the point of where Merab even made a comment saying like, "Hey, he can hardly walk." So, I mean, it sounded, you know, hopefully you see Al back, but you know, as the time goes on, because he hasn't fought, I think since he lost to Hooker, right?
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Which was a long time ago. So, I mean, hopefully he's, you know, able to come back, but it's not sounding good. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and hopefully he has a speedy recovery, because we have not seen Al Quinta, Raging Al, in a very long time. Roman also asks, if Leon Edwards and Stephen Thompson win their fights, who gets the next shot? It's a good question. I would think Leon gets it over Thompson only because he's fighting Diaz. And if you beat a Diaz brother, you get some clout to get a title shot. Just ask Jorge Masvidal. What do you think?
Yeah, of course. You know what I mean? Like, the path back to the title just seems to get longer and longer for Wonder Boy. I don't know why, man. I like Wonder Boy. He's winning fights. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's neck and neck with Leon, but like you said, the Diaz fight, man, a 5-rounder in the co-main event, there's a reason for that. And it's to make money, and also to line them up, right? Whoever wins that fight gets the next shot at the winner of Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman.
Let's keep the questions going. Roman says, James, if Michael Chandler wins, will you pick him against guys like Justin and Poirier? I know a lot of people. This is what I'm talking about. You know, going against the. Well, actually, I'm not even going against the grain. Oliveira is the favorite, I think. So I think he is. But yeah, I'm
going against the grain.
Yeah. It depends how he wins. If Chandler knocks out Oliveira in the first round, then I probably would. I think would favor Justin and Dustin. Let me explain this, because I know people are going to get confused here. If Chandler gets a quick win again, like he did against Hooker, I think I would favor Dustin and Justin over him. However, if Chandler goes out there and gets maybe a later finish, or he shows a bit more of his game in the fight with Oliveira, let's say he goes out there and just dominates Oliveira, he takes him down, he puts him against the fence, he lands shots, and let's say he gets like a late finish, then I might come around on Chandler. But I still think, and I know this is crazy, and I know it's not me not giving credit to Chandler, it's just that the Pitbull fight's fresh in my mind. The guys that he fought in Bellator's fresh in my mind. Like, when you get a quick win like that, it doesn't tell us a lot, right? Like, we've seen guys go out there. Look at Edmund Shabazian. There's a perfect example. Edmund Shabazian was wrecking guys, here and there. He did have the split with Darren Stewart, but remember when he destroyed Brad Tavares? Everyone thought he was going to beat Derek Brunson. Now, I know we're talking about different fighters here. Shabazian obviously very green and all that, but still, it kind of reminds me of that, where it's like, is he that good, or is it the fact that he just landed a good shot on his opponent here? So that's where I stand. I don't dislike Michael Chandler. I think Michael Chandler absolutely can beat Oliveira. Want to get that out there. I think Chandler's great, and obviously the UFC wants Chandler to win because he's more marketable than Charles Oliveira. But the only way I think I would, like I said, I feel like Chandler would have an advantage over Gaethje and Poirier is if he gives me a dominant win as opposed to a quick one. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree with you. You know what I mean? Like, Oliveira, it seems like a lot of people are picking Oliveira to win this fight. You know what I mean? Especially fighters. Fighters in that division, they like Oliveira in the matchup. But then I spoke with Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker's like, man, I think I'm leaning towards Chandler, but there could be a reason for that.
Well, it's funny because I talked to Jeff Neal yesterday and I asked him who you picking with Burns and Wonderboy. He says, "Of course I'm taking Wonderboy. It makes me look way better." So it's like, you know what I mean? Like in the back of their head, it could be that, but you never know. Like again, it is a 50-50 fight with those two coming up here in a few weeks. Lucas in the chat says, "Do you think Cejudo will come back and become king of 135-pound again?" I don't think he comes back, and here's why. And I've said this for a while, and I'm sticking to this theory. Cejudo wants the type of money that like McGregor and all these big stars are getting. And I don't think Cejudo is that type of draw. And I think the UFC knows that. And I don't think there's a matchup in the UFC that would be a big money generator. If he comes back and fights Hyon, not a money fight. If he comes back and fights Sterling, not a money fight. If he fights Garbrandt, I mean, they're managed by the same manager. I don't know if that's a fight they'd want. You get what I'm saying here. It would have to be a big name. Like even the Cruz fight, I don't know the numbers on that, but I don't think it did like outstanding numbers. No. And then let's go even further. Let's say he wants to fight Volkanovski. That's not a money fight. He fights Ortega. That's not like, this is what I'm getting at. Like there aren't the opponents that would get him that money that he wants. And two, I don't think he's as big of a draw as people think he is. The views are good on, most of his content, but a lot of that's lost with the fact he's retired. So I don't think he comes back because I don't think he gets paid what he wants to get paid. That's my theory.
There's no money fights under lightweight. If you go below lightweight, there's no money fights.
Yeah,
none.
100%.
So Cejudo's not going to go fight at lightweight, right? Unless he's crazy, right? But he is kind of, right? Because he'll do something. But I've seen Cejudo, working on his pro wrestling. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So maybe he's going to go that route. That'll be good for him. You know what I mean? He's kind of had that character, right? That triple C cringe and all that stuff. So maybe he could, go over there and do some damage over there at WCW. I don't even watch wrestling, so I don't even
WWE. WCW is a little old, but yeah. No worries. We're close to the same age. Roman says, "I'm more hyped for Rose Zhang than Usman Masvidal too." Everyone is. No one wants to see. Like, I mean, we'll give our underdog picks at the end of this live stream, but this was not the rematch we all wanted. The rematch we wanted was Colby and Usman. That was a close fight. This fight, I mean, unless Masvidal does something crazy that's totally unexpected, I don't think there's any way he's going to win. The odds indicate that Usman's as big of a favorite. Usman's as big of a favorite as Valentina is against Andrade. Like that's how much people feel that he's going to go out there and win. So. Really? Even I would have even taken like a Wonder Boy fight just because it's a fresh matchup. Like this Masvidal thing. Like I guess that I would be willing to bet two things. Number one, Masvidal was probably promised this when he took that fight to begin with, because I'm sure he got paid well, but I don't think he got paid exactly what he wanted. And I'm sure part of that was like, look, we'll give you the money you want, but it'll be over 2 fights. I guarantee that conversation happened. And number two is, I think Usman looks at it as like, well, what's going to make me more money, Masvidal or Wonder Boy or Leon Edwards? It's obviously going to be Masvidal. Although saying that, we've talked about this before, Masvidal's taken a hit over the last year for a variety of reasons. Number one, it's supporting Trump. Again, we're not a political show, but there are people who don't like him for that. Two, there's the whole thing with him and Jake Paul, which I think actually worked against him, because people wanted Ben to win for the sake of MMA and people hate Jake Paul. And three is like, Masvidal hasn't fought anyone since the last fight. Like, had he gone out there, let's say he fought someone else and got a knockout win, there'd be more reason to be excited about this. But we're basing this off the fact he didn't have a good camp. I think Masvidal looked better, but I would be very surprised if he won on Saturday. So I think 90% of the people agree with you there, except for Team Masvidal people.
Yeah, and he still has a cult following. I mean, it's not he doesn't. And but I'm not a like pay-per-view numbers guy, but I think this is the reason why they put Masvidal in this position is because of the pay-per-view numbers.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's going to draw as much as it did, the first fight.
No. And here's what I base it on. And I know this is a very limited data that we can sort of get to here, but I do base things off the pros picks. Like what's more popular in terms of videos. You know what video is kicking its ass? Weili Zhang and Rose. Absolutely kicking its ass. Like the views are not even close. Like Rose and Zhang is getting way more views, and it dummy me. I should have made more videos of that, because if I would have known, I would have promoted that. But I thought Masvidal would have enough left that like it would sort of push it, but the views are not good. They're not. So it's it just goes to show you the interest in terms of what people are into. And I think part of that too, aside from the fact that Zhang has a huge following, is the fight itself. If Zhang was fighting like Carla Esparza, I don't think people would be as amped, but it's Rose, and there is that shot. And the fact that people hate Rose. People want to see Rose lose too. That's part of it as well, right? So
it's like almost like Rose inadvertently made herself the heel.
No, she 100% did. Yeah. It's very odd. And
crazy,
yeah, we don't need to get into it. There's a lot of weird fans out there. I got the fight analyst says I got Zhang drowning Rose with volume in the later rounds.
Possible, man.
Possible for sure. Again, I'm not putting anything past this. Could Zhang go out there and knock out Rose? Absolutely. Could Zhang go out there and win a decision? Absolutely. Like that's the odds are close for a reason. I don't feel like it's a guarantee Rose is going to win. I just think she can win. And you're talking about betting the fight. I think if you can get Rose at plus money, throw a little bit on there. I might take a stab on that.
I think the over, like 2.5 rounds over. I think that's a good bet.
Yeah. Is it only at 2.5?
I don't know. Like, I don't really know about bets, but isn't isn't that how you bet? Is it like 2.5?
Well, rounds? Yeah, you can bet, but usually with title fights, they do it a little bit later. I'm going to find out the over right now.
Oh,
the over is.
I think it's going to go championship.
Wow.
round.
Okay, hold on. The over they have a bunch of overs, which is not likely for them. So they have an over 1.5, which is minus 500, no value there. Over 2.5 is minus 265. That's actually a pretty good value. Like. Again, where's this evidence of Rose getting finished early? She got finished, I guess, in the second round against Andrade, but that's the only time in her entire career that she's been finished that early. Maybe she got submitted on tough, if I remember. Or no, she lost. Got to double check this here again.
Yeah, but I don't see this fight ending early at all. I feel like they're going to fill each other out for a couple of rounds. I think it's going to take at least 2 rounds to get them used to each other, and then
even when she lost to Esparza, at the tough finale, that was a 3rd round finish. So you still get your over 2.5. So the over 2.5 is minus 285. The over 3.5 is minus 185, and then the over 4.5 is minus 140. Like you don't usually see this. Usually it's like 1 or 2 overs that they have, but the fact they have this much just shows you how interesting this fight is. So anyways, spent a lot of time on that, but that's my thoughts on that. What do you guys think about Andrade's chances against Shevchenko? It's got a puncher's chance, but you're fighting one of the best strikers, not just in the flyweight division, not just in women's MMA in general. Valentina is a killer. You see her hitting the bags. She'd kill me. She would absolutely kill me. And I'm 200 pounds. So, I don't, again, Andrade has a puncher's chance, but height and reach disadvantage. I mean, there's a lot of things not to like as well. And she struggled with the height and reach of Rose in the rematch, right?
Yeah. And Andrade, like you said, she has that puncher's chance, and she has that like strength, I think maybe strength advantage somewhat, but Valentina's strong too, and she's much bigger. I don't see it's going to be hard to see like a path to victory for Andrade in that fight unless she just clips her, like what is it, Carolina got caught in that with that type of punch. But I think she has a better chin, Valentina does. Have you ever seen Valentina rocked?
Nope, never,
not even with Amanda.
Mind you, I do want to warn people about that, because you remember Cyborg had never really been rocked either, and then Amanda finished in the first round. So I mean, I'm just saying it can happen, but still, you're 100% right about that. We don't need to put this question up. There is a press conference for 261. I'm sure if you Google it, you can find it. I know there was information on that. Any update on Tatiana Suarez? Gabriel from Cage Side Press did an interview with her this week. He did like a preview show. I didn't watch the whole thing. Shout out to Gabriel, by the way. Tatiana is one of those fighters I can sometimes get, sometimes I can't. I've texted her a bunch of times. She ghosts me, and then other times I get her right away. It's fine. And Ab sort of chimed in on the chat here as well. He said, did an interview this week targeting Summer for her comeback. Might even fight at flyweight for a return, but her main focus will be strawweight. I don't think she should fight at flyweight unless she just wants to get her bearings about her, but she's in a good spot at strawweight. Like, why risk that? Although I guess if you fight in another weight class, it wouldn't really make a difference unless she fought like someone that she could easily beat. I think that, but yeah, she's sort of been the sort of forgotten fighter in that division because of her injuries, unfortunately. And here's the worst part. Like, she had to retire from wrestling because of the neck injury. Now it's coming up again. I mean, this could be one of those early careers that we see in the UFC because of her injuries. So we'll see, hopefully all the best, but your thoughts on all that?
Man, that sucks, man, because she was like a future champ, like everybody was talking about her. She's like the unstoppable force. She's the Cain Velasquez of the division, and she was, man. But man, I think the neck, and Aljo's getting neck surgery too right now, or he did get neck surgery, so it's something we need to watch closely with some of these fighters. If she's coming back in the summer, and if the summer passes by and we don't see her, man, I don't see her coming back.
Let's get to Ab's other question. What's up, guys? Did you watch the Daly versus Hamasi last week? How awesome was that? Yeah, you gotta love comeback fights, right? I mean, that's what was insane. That was pretty insane. Paul Daly still, he doesn't get a lot of credit because he can't stop a takedown, right? Like that's been he would be a title challenger if he could stop a takedown. He can't, unfortunately, in a lot of cases. But he is one of the most exciting fighters to ever fight in MMA. That round he had against Diaz in Strikeforce, for example. But yeah, that was awesome. Paul Daly still got it in terms of putting on exciting fights, not in terms of being a title challenger. But yeah, that was a good win for him. What'd you think?
And also, that was at 175 pounds too. That was even at 170 pounds, which was kind of odd. But I guess he's trying to create this new division in Bellator, 175-pound division. I like it. Why not? If you're not going to challenge for the title, do one-offs. You know what I mean? Paul Daly is exciting enough.
You hit the nail on the head here. And, people give Bellator crap for that. Oh, why do they do so many catchweight fights? Why not? They're going to fight better. And especially if you're not in the title picture, why not do that? I'm totally cool with that. Sign Collectibles says, how did you score the Julia Budd fight last week? I had her winning 29-28. I don't know about you. How did you score that one?
I didn't even watch it. Like I didn't. It wasn't anything to write home about. I think Budd, and I have no intel, by the way. I actually didn't do my show with Chris this week. Her cat passed away. I don't know if you guys saw that. Sending my best to Chris on that. But I think Julia will still get the winner of Smith and Cyborg. They got to do that rematch at some point, right? Because Julia was the long-time champ. She's won what, 2 now since that fight, so she should get another title shot there. The fight analyst, I'm big on Chandler over Oliveira. There you go. You're on John's side. What's your under the radar fight for UFC 261? Ooh, good thinking there. Man, there's a lot of good fights on here. I think the under the radar fight for sure, just in terms of implications, in terms of action, and there's a little bit of a storyline, and I'll explain that after I get your thoughts on this. But Brendan Allen and Carl Roberson. That's the under the radar fight. That's a huge fight in that division. Brendan Allen looking to bounce back from that loss to Sean Strickland. Carl Roberson has had just the worst luck in terms of health and all that. Lost to Vettori. Now he's fighting Brendan Allen. 2 guys kind of in the same range right now. Very curious to see how that one unfolds. What's your sleeper pick? I think the sleeper pick right here is Randy Brown versus Cowboy Oliveira.
Yeah, that's going to be good too.
It's going to be an insane fight. I think because it's so buried in the prelims. There's a lot of fights buried in the prelims, but that one, I think that one's going to be some fireworks. Those guys, that welterweight division has so many gunners, man. Like Randy Brown, a gunner, Colorado, a gunner, man. Like Mike Perry, there's a long list. Daniel Rodriguez. Welterweight division they have a lot of exciting fighters, man. It's just they just win one and lose one, because they're so good and they're so dangerous. So yeah, I think that one is the best one.
Christopher Edwards Bailey says Masvidal has 3 other big fights if he loses to Usman, Diaz, Covington, and Edwards. I don't think he ever fights Edwards. There's no upside for George taking that fight. I think it's a fight he knows he would probably lose. And Edwards, like, no one cared at all that they had that altercation, right? Otherwise they would have made the fight. They literally, like, it's like that almost didn't even happen. You know what I mean? Like they haven't really built up that. So I'm with you with the other 2 with Diaz and Covington. The other thing is, I don't know if you caught that this week, Dana White saying that Covington will get the winner of Saturday's fight, which is interesting because Ali Abdelaziz has said there's no way Colby's getting that fight. But come on, like, Colby beat Woodley. It was a close fight, their first one. I don't care what people say. Like, the people who said that Usman dominated Colby in that fight were the people that hate Colby for the most part, because I was there live and I had it even going into the 5th. You could have even given Kamaru a round there. I'm fine with that. But to say Covington got dominated, that's not true. Yes, he got finished, but it was a pretty close fight overall, some of those earlier rounds especially.
And he was fighting with a broken jaw too, and he was
exactly
throwing hard continuously until that 5th round. So yeah, I agree with you. That was a close fight going into the 5th round. It could have been a toss-up, whoever won that round, but Usman got the finish. Hey, what about Colby being at 261? I think he'll be there. I think he'll be there.
It's in Florida, right? So
it's Florida crowd. I think he'll be there.
Well, but are they going to let him in? Like with COVID, like it's not like the old days. Like remember at the what was it, the Woodley and Usman fight? Colby was in the crown with the megaphone. He can't do that now because there's COVID regulations, unless he's got his COVID test or whatever. I don't know if he's going to be
ringside. I think he'll be cage side.
They should. I mean, if the UFC was smart, they would get him ringside and get him to go in the cage and do one of those classic Rashad Evans, Quentin Jackson promos. Yeah. I love that stuff. By the way, that's the old pro wrestling fan of me. I like all that stuff. Roman says, did you check out T Wood's interview with Ariel? Looks like he's serious about fighting Paul. Well, that's not surprising. Who wouldn't want to fight Jake Paul?
Yeah,
it's a huge payday.
Multi-million-dollar payday.
Here, I was explaining this to Gerald yesterday, Mershart, when we did our interview the other day, because he's obviously friends with Woodley, trains with them and stuff. What would you rather do? Go take a tournament in PFL and potentially lose and have to, be quarantined and wait for your family this long and go through all these fights just to win $1 million, or get close to $1 million and fight Jake Paul? You'd fight Jake Paul, and especially when there's a chance he could win. And yes, I think Tyron Woodley could beat Jake Paul.
Oh,
Like
of
Woodley
course.
has legit knockout power.
Yeah.
He has striking. Yes, he's taken some damage and he's older, but like that's a legit striker that Paul could face in this fight. Now Paul has a puncher's chance. I'll never count that out again, but still, it's yeah. I of course it doesn't surprise me.
Woodley has basically transformed into a boxer, which is the MMA fighter, right? With
Yeah,
wrestling.
yeah.
That's basically him. So yeah, of course. But I don't think Jake Paul would step into the ring with Woodley though. That's a real dangerous fight.
Yeah, and the thing I said too, and we talked about this on our live stream on Saturday, is that is Woodley the type of name like Askren's a name because of Masvidal. Is Woodley a big name? Do people even know much about Tyron Woodley these days? He hasn't been welterweight champion since what 2019, I think 2018. When was the Usman fight? Was it 2018? Anyways, my whole thing is that I don't think he holds the same name value as say like BJ Penn wants to fight him. That might be a more incentive for him to fight BJ Penn, with Penn having all kinds of personal issues and all that, and just like him not seemingly even in shape or whatever. So
you see what Woodley should have done if he really wanted that fight. After the fight was over, he should have went over and slapped Jake Paul in the face inside the ring, and then
Brian Ortega.
Yeah, then now you have the fight right automatically, but he didn't do it, man. I don't think they're gonna give it to him.
Sign Collectible says, "What fighters do you think could be great coaches like Mike Brown or James Krause?" Coaches. That's a specific skill set.
It's hard to say, man, because
I know
fighters.
like he already is a coach, and I've heard good reviews from his peers. Is Grant Dawson? He's still really young, but I think coaching will be in his future as well. Is there anyone that comes to mind on your end?
It's hard to say because they're fighters, you know what I mean? And the thing is, like, like Grant Dawson and James Krause, they're interesting people because like it's hard to be a coach and a fighter at the same time, man.
Oh yeah,
you're a fighter, you're selfish, and then you're a coach, you're the least selfish. So it's balancing that out, which is it's working for them, but man, it takes a special individual, man. Because I've talked to coaches that were fighters that try to balance it, and then they couldn't handle it, man. And yeah, but I don't see it's hard to say. That's a question you really have to think about.
Who deserves a title shot more, Leon Edwards or Colby Covington? Okay, first off, deserves does not exist in MMA, unfortunately. We got to be clear about that, right? Like, I mean, there's plenty of times when a fighter has been passed over for a title shot or a guy who's more entertaining or whatever. Leon deserves it more in the sense that even though Colby had a close fight, Colby had a stoppage loss in there. If Leon wins, he would have not lost since the first Usman fight. So Leon deserves it more based off merit. But what's going to happen? Colby will get it. It's who sells more, Colby or Leon? It's Colby, no problem, because people want to see Colby lose. Yeah. So that you're going to get the people tuning in just for that. Then there's the Colby fans, which are like, everything. They just, they sort of flood everything. So, it's just one of those things, right? So keep that in mind as well. Roman says, yeah, people hating on Colby. I remember some media members gave RDA the decision over Colby. I remember who those media members were, and they're very politically leaning certain ways. So yeah, I don't think RDA beat Colby.
From what I remember, Colby was just overwhelming in that fight, man. It was a great fight for Colby.
Yeah, no, it was won him an interim title, right? If you remember. Do you think John Jones fights Francis similar to the OSP fight? I don't think John Jones fights Francis. I think there's too much at play here. If you think about when Jones announced that he was going up to heavyweight, and the fact that here we are now and there's still money issues, tells me that this is not going to get resolved anytime soon. The UFC seems to be willing to move on from it. But let's say hypothetically it does happen. Do I think Jones fights Francis similar to the OSP fight? I think Jones finds a way to neutralize that power, because nobody wants to get hit by Francis Ngannou. So you got to figure out a way to do that. The one thing I do want to see if he can do is uses wrestling, because I know Stipe sort of tried to do that, and I know it's easier said than done, but John, like, why play with fire with Francis in the stand-up? Like, you're not going to win that. All Francis has to do is hit you once. Jones might be able to use his reach and stuff, but still, I'd go for the takedown. Let's see what his ground game's like. He's never really been tested on there, right? So
yeah, I see the same thing. The wrestling's going to be a key factor, and you know what? Another thing that's going to be a key factor is eye pokes.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, I think because when you start reaching out there, trying to keep your distance, especially John, he tends to like poke people in the eye, so that could be something.
Yeah. Let's get a few more questions here. We got about over 5 minutes left. People don't care who Jake Paul fights. They just care that we believe he can lose. No, of course. But I just think from Jake's perspective, it's got to be lucrative, right? Like a Woodley fight, is that as much as say fighting a Diaz brother? Absolutely not. A Diaz brother would, generate huge numbers. So, yeah, I think, it's all Jake. Jake holds all the cards here. I mean, he decides who's going to want to fight. And that's why the Askren fight was strategic.
He owns the promotion, you know what I mean? Like he does everything. So yeah, Jake will fight whoever he wants to fight. It's not even like it's basically like the Conor McGregor lottery, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you get lucky enough to fight him, you're gonna fight him and you're gonna get paid a lot, right? That's what it is.
Abs in the chat says, I really think Kamaru retires maybe after 1 or 2 more fights. I could see that. You know what? I mean, it never. The longer you stick around, the worse it usually gets for you, right? So. And if you think about it, let's map this out here. Let's say Usman wins Saturday. Let's say they do him and Colby, then maybe him and Leon, then maybe him and Wonderboy. That's pretty much everyone in the division. Like there's no one right now. And let me just double check here. Maybe I'm missing someone here. But if you're looking at the welterweight division right now, like there's no one really in the wings that's like, man, I want to see, like other than maybe Chimaev. And, if you're Usman, why do you want to fight him right now? Like, yeah, it would be a big payday, like in terms of the viewership and stuff, but you don't want to fight Chimaev. Like, I'm just looking here. Like, I don't see anyone really like, outstanding in terms of like up and comers that could be like a serious threat. Like remember when Johnny Walker was on his run, everyone was like, oh man, I would love to see Johnny against John Jones. But like, there hasn't really been anyone like that at welterweight. There's been some guys quietly making good wins. Like Sean Brady, for example, I think is going to be a problem for a lot of people in that division. I think Kiesa's made a lot of improvements, but not enough to make me think he could beat like an Usman. So, Abs, you're onto something there. I completely agree with that. I could see him ending in early retirement as well. Even though Usman's 33, I could see him just a couple more years and then see you later. Get out while I can, right? So. See what happens there. Another question. Don't you think it's really silly that John didn't come out to some sort of agreement with the UFC about his pay before he started bulking up to heavyweight? Yeah, but I think John also thinks that, and I think it's sort of his mentality is that he thinks he holds all the cards here, which he does to a certain degree. He is one of the biggest names in the UFC. People know you watch a John Jones fight, it's gonna get pretty good viewership. I know a lot of people point to the fact that like he hasn't broken over 1 million like a Conor or Ronda, which is true. But then, like, his argument, which makes sense, is like, look, Wilder and Fury did similar numbers to me. Like, why can't I make the type of money that I want? So I don't know if it's going to get resolved. We've seen money get in the way a lot of times with other fighters. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, it would have been great to see John figure this all out before he started bulking up. But on the flip side, like, what money fights are for John at light heavyweight? There's none. Like, I get John moving up. Like, what's more exciting? John fighting Francis Ngannou or Stipe or even like a Derek Lewis? Or is it him fighting Jan Blachowicz or Glover again or like Reyes again? You get where I'm going with this? Like, it's not, they don't hold the same prestige as those opponents do. So had light heavyweight had some more interesting characters in that division, I think John probably would have stayed. But I think he's looking at this from a money perspective going, look, these are bigger fights. That's why I'm moving up. So that's what I think.
I don't know. You'd think his management would be trying to get him out of the contract to leave the UFC.
Well, I don't think it's not that simple. I think you got to fulfill your contract. That's what that's something we talked about with the Diaz and Edwards fight. I think the only reason Nate took that fight is because he's trying to get out of that contract, because he's these YouTube guys wanting to box MMA fighters, and Nate knows he can have a piece of that pie with his name value. Yeah. So I think it's more a case of Nate just trying to run out his contract. Same sort of deal.
Were you the one that said that the people from Triller reached out to John?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, someone was saying that the people at Triller, when he was going through all of that with Dana White and the UFC, that they reached out to him and said, if you could get out of the contract, we will sign you immediately, and you'll be making way more than what the UFC was paying you at Triller. And I could see that happening, to be honest with you.
But again, it's can you get out of that contract? The UFC makes the contracts for a reason. Like, if you want a comparable, WWE is very similar to the UFC in terms of how they do their contracts, how they own every part of you. Like, it's ironclad for a reason. So the fighters don't really have a lot of rights in that regard. The fight analyst says Michael Kiesa versus Sean Brady's, please and thank you. I would love to see that fight, but the only problem is Sean Brady is ranked number 14, Kiesa's 7. That's a pretty big jump for Brady. Like, I think Brady would be competitive and potentially even could beat a Michael Kiesa. For Kiesa's perspective, what do you gain out of that? You're fighting a guy who's ranked lower, doesn't have a big name. Where's the incentive? That's the only thing I look at.
There is no incentive. There's so many other guys that he can fight with much bigger names, and I think Kiesa wants main event fights, right? Because he wants to stack it up, get paid more. So, and you know what? Have you liked Kiesa on the desk?
Yeah, he's been pretty good.
Yeah, he has been pretty good, right? You could tell he's studied a lot. Like he's
Yeah.
knowledgeable. Like he knows his shit. Like that's what I like about Kiesa. He was well prepared. Remember when Josh Koscheck, that one time he came on the broadcast and he was working the desk?
Yeah.
Dude, it was a disaster,
There,
man.
there's
Like,
there's some really bad ones. We don't need to go through that. I almost forgot for our underdog picks this week. Thank God I'm
all
organized
right,
here. But
let's
let's
get
get to
into
our
those.
underdog picks. So you guys already know I'm picking Rose, but I'll go a different one here, and I got a lot of shit for this pick as well. I think Anthony Smith beats Jimmy Crute. And the reason I think that is because I don't think Crute's going to get a quick finish like people are expecting, because that's Crute's MO. Crute usually goes out there and finishes guys quickly. Like we saw that with Modestus. We saw that in his fight against Olashechuk, Sam Alvey. Those are all first round finishes. Anthony Smith is not a first round fit guy to get finished. Look at Rakic. He had trouble finishing Anthony Smith. I think Smith potentially could weather the early storm and maybe take over a little bit as the fight goes on a little bit. And you just look at the gap in experience. I think it's worth a shot looking at Anthony Smith going into this fight on Saturday. So I know people are going to say I'm crazy. I know people are going to say Smith's done. He's past his prime, whatever. I get all that. Trust me. Crute could absolutely go out there and finish him, but just based off his past performances where Crute's a quick finisher, you can't do that against an Anthony Smith. So I think Smith survives the early storm and gets the upset win. Who's your underdog?
Yeah. I agree with you. Anthony Smith is very durable and still durable, and
Yeah.
he can still finish fights, and he still has that ground game. I think Jimmy Crute might be overzealous in this fight and go in there and blow his wad early on, and then Anthony Smith could take over. I think that's a great pick for underdog. Like I'm not picking this guy, but I could see him winning. You know who it is? Uriah Hall. He's the underdog against Chris Weidman. And
What? Is he really?
Is he? Am I
No,
right?
no. It was okay. When I did my show, it was dead even.
Okay.
You're right. He is the underdog. Holy
Yeah.
crap, guys.
So
Yeah.
that's a pick right there, right? Like I can see Uriah Hall coming in there and
He's gonna
upsetting
knock
Chris
Weidman out.
Weidman. Yeah, he can. But I see Weidman being able to wrestle, you know what I mean, like in this fight. And that's why I'm picking Weidman to win the fight. But if I was gonna bet, maybe I'd throw some money on Uriah Hall. And another underdog that I might throw some money on is Tristan Connolly. I
Yeah,
think
at
he can come
45
back.
could get very interesting. A lot
Yeah,
of experience.
exactly.
Connolly. The fact that Connolly beat Michelle Pereira, who's basically a middleweight, and Connolly had that car accident before he fought Pereira is equally impressive. And Tristan being out in Vegas, I'm with you there too. That's another one I think could cash
Tough.
as well. When I think I did pick Pat on my show, but I definitely see some value in Tristan. I'll throw some anyways. Tristan, he lives like 30 minutes away from me. So got to be a little biased there with the picking and all that. So there you go. So my pick, we'll come back next week, see how we do. My official pick for this show is going to be Anthony Smith, and your pick was Hall, which the line could flip back by the time we do this. But yeah, Hall, and Hall inside the distance. I want to even just have a quick look at that, see if there's any value there as well. Like Hall by knockout is what we get any good numbers on that? Hall wins by here TKO. I'm just looking here. Sorry. Hall wins by TKO on some betting lines is like 2 to plus 200. So yeah, I think it's a possibility. Because here's the thing: Akhmedov not a finisher, right? Like that was the whole thing, is that Akhmedov can kind of grind you out, win a decision type thing. So there was never any threat of that. But with Hall, there is that threat. Now the problem with Hall though is how long did it take him to knock out Anderson Silva? It took him a couple rounds, and this is only a 3-round fight. So it is possible that Hall could perhaps, like you said, get out wrestled with it only being a 3-round fight. So that is one thing to sort of keep in mind in this fight. But I think Hall wins. I think this is the fight where he really breaks through, especially being under safe Cejudo at 4-7 MMA. So there you go. All right. I know we got some other questions. Just post them in the comments. We'll get to them after. We are way over time. Well, not way over time. We're like a minute over, but want to remind everyone again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to grow this show every single week and get the subscribers up. So that's an easy way to support us here. We do this every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. Again, a lot of you want to talk smack, do it on the app. We got our picks out there. They're easy to find. It's the best app out there right now. I love using it, and it's great. So just download that. If your iPhone, Android, doesn't matter. The app's available for everyone there. Before we go, John, anything you got coming up this week, interview-wise? Anything you want to plug? I'll give you the floor here.
Not really anything this week. I just, did an interview with Anthony Pettis. He's about to make his PFL debut. I got a couple others from PFL, Jordan Young, Tom Lawler, Shoeface, and then I got a bunch of interviews from UFC 251 coming up this weekend. You could go on my Twitter right 61. There on the bottom.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, 261.
Yeah.
Go over there, check them out. I got a bunch of the Chinese fighters. A lot of people don't know who they are, where they come from. Check out my interviews. You'll find out. thing.
And same thing with me, UFC 261, very heavy on the interviews this week. You can find it. It's pinned to the top of my Twitter, which is @Lynch on Sports. Other interviews I got coming up this week. I got Neil Magny tomorrow, so I'm going to be talking to him about that Jeff Neal fight. I just interviewed Jeff yesterday, so you can check that out on the channel as well. Also talked to Shane Burgos ahead of his fight against Edson Barbosa. Really good stuff there from Shane, talking about how, the 257 fight not happening actually worked out in his favor. He had a lot of injuries, nearly pulled out of that fight anyway, so it kind of worked out with Hakeem being out of the fight. Really good stuff there from Shane Burgos. Again, I'm James Lynch. He is John Coe. Thanks so much for tuning in. Shout out to producer Michael for making this all happen. Best guy in the industry. Love working with him. Again, download the app, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll be back here a week today. And also quickly, before we go, make sure you check out John and I on our channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. John and I are going to be doing a live stream hangout on Saturday during the UFC 261 pay-per-view. So you can ask questions. You can watch the fights with us. Hopefully we'll be in sync. We'll have to discuss that after this. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night or wherever you are, and appreciate you tuning in.